Decibels are changing in 1.4 for ZenlessZoneZero, and there are a lot of implications and things to research and look into, since this sounds like one of the biggest changes that Zenless had since, well, its inception. Now, before we get into the actual changes themselves, you might be wondering what decibels are or what they even mean, and luckily for you, it's not too complicated. Now, before we go any further, there are 3 new codes here which you can use for polychromes and unlocking new characters, but I do want to remind you guys that some of the footage you'll see today is from the creator beta server, and because of that, some things may be subject to change, so keep that in mind when watching today's video. Decibels are the ultimate generating system for ZenlessZoneZero, and when this number here on the side raises to 3000, it essentially means that you gain access to your ultimate. Now, in terms of what's being changed, first and foremost, everyone is now going to have their own decibel meter or rating. However, this is also alongside a new system where everyone now gains decibels at a different rate. Now, for characters that are on field, this means that you gain 100% of whatever decibels you were originally going to receive just because you use a skill or an ability. But for the agents that are off field, this means that you only gain roughly half. Now, speaking too vaguely about this might seem a little bit obscure or a bit too theoretical, so let's actually talk about one specific case study with Ellen. Now, assuming that you land all the hits for Ellen's combo, here's what I found. For the basic combo without ice, you gain roughly 68 to 69 decibels. In regards to the same combo but with ice, she gains 75 decibels. She gained 36 decibels for her dash attack with 12 for the first hit and 24 for the second. Her first EX special gave 109 decibels, with her second EX special giving 102. Her perfect dodge gave 20, her dodge counter gave 24, her assists gave 215, and the follow-up to the assists gave 60, chain attack gave 212, with the anomaly giving 164. Now, of course, these were for Ellen in 1.3, but with the changes, there are a new set of decibel values for each of these moves. For Ellen's basic combo without ice, she now gains 88. With her ice combo, she now gains 96. For her dash attack, she gains 45. Her first EX gives 140. Her perfect dodge still gives 20, and a dodge counter now gives 29 to 30. The assist stays at 215, but the assist follow-up has been increased to 123. The chain attack has been buffed to 291. And finally, the anomaly has been nerfed a little bit to 125. Now, before we actually go into the exact numbers of how much was changed, there is something that you should know, and that's the fact that a lot of these numbers would fluctuate depending on what I hit, who I was hitting, what encounter I was in, and this isn't even talking about the decibel generation you'd get across different characters. Now, in regards to Ellen, what I found was that for her basic attack without ice, this is a 27% increase, and for her ice combo, this is roughly the same, but sometimes can even be a 28% increase. For her dash attack, this is a 25% increase. For her EX special, this was a 28 and 170% increase to decibel gain. Her perfect dodge was again the same, with a dodge counter being a roughly 4% increase, which doesn't mean a whole lot. Her assist was exactly the same. However, the assist follow-up, as we saw earlier, was a 105% increase. And finally, her chain increased by 39%, and her anomaly decreased by a total of roughly 24%. Now, in theory, this all should mean that Ellen and her teammates should generate ultimates faster, which should then result in quicker clears, but that actually wasn't really the case in practice. Let me explain. I tested the typical Ellen, Lyko, and Sokaku team against the Butcher in both the new and old versions of ZenlessZoneZero, and what I found was surprising to say the least. Although 1.4's ultimate changes would in theory allow you to cast multiple powerful ultimates, this didn't necessarily result in an overwhelmingly faster clear. This could be for a number of reasons, including an added tankiness to enemies, or even just the fact that some ultimates take longer to cast and have decently long animations. But what actually ended up happening was that the clears were pretty similar in finish time. For transparency, the Ellen build that I ran for both of these teams were pretty similar in terms of main stats and overall damage. However, I wasn't able to get it perfectly replicated in both setups, just being completely honest. Apologies again for that, but it's pretty tough, honestly, to get the exact same numbers. However, overall, I don't think it changed things too much anyways. But what does this mean for the future of ZenlessZoneZero's rotations in combat? Well, to be honest, it's really hard to say. Based on what I found from testing the decibel system, there are a lot of inconsistencies and additional factors to consider, including anomalies, interrupts, dodges, etc., that make each run unique from each other. But what I can say is that the new system certainly did not feel punishing if you decided to use additional ultimates as opposed to before. Personally, on how good or bad the new system is, simply because of how long the list of pros and cons are. Now, that being said, I do think that the pro of being able to see all the different ultimates is pretty worthwhile, and it is pretty cool too. But on a final note, I know that some of you guys were also concerned about Juyuan and whether her being off field and having less decibel generation would be a concern for her overall damage or gameplay, and I'm happy to report, thankfully, she pretty much feels exactly the same. I didn't actually end up missing any prior windows of damage that I'd otherwise have access to in 1.3, and I cleared at essentially the exact same rate. What I found, especially for this, was that any additional decibels that I would have otherwise generated with Juruen would kind of be wasted, since I'd be generating additional decibels for an ultimate that I wouldn't be able to use because the boss ends up dying anyways. And in that case, since I was able to use roughly the same amount of ultimates at roughly the same periods, this didn't pose that much of a big deal specifically to me. Now, in terms of what rotations, what changes, and things of this nature will actually be affected, or what new best in slot openers should look like, I can't really say, especially since it's not as though we are given access to ultimates much especially since it's not like we're gaining our ultimates at the very beginning of any fight. We still have to generate them. I found myself still pretty much doing the exact same rotations, doing the exact same setups, with the exact same team compositions, and honestly just having more ultimates to use so that I could do a little bit more damage and be a bit flashier with it at the exact same time. Ultimately, no pun intended, this could of course change across different characters. However, specifically for the case study that I went through, which was with Ellen, it is kind of nice to see the fact that this didn't change too much specifically for her gameplay. I am still worried for whether characters like Yanagi, MIYABI, all these characters together will kind of make the ultimate system imbalanced. But if you'd like to see a video like that and more, feel free to let me know in the comment section below. I'll leave you guys with a showcase of the unedited and just raw footage of the two fights and the runs that I was able to do, specifically with the two setups. However, I do think that what I showed was pretty indicative of what you'll also experience, with slight variations and of course a bit of skill issue from here or there. If you'd like to leave a comment about what your thoughts are for the new 1.4 system, feel free to let me know. But as always, guys, feel free to take everything you saw here with a grain of salt, as of course, things are subject to change, and what you see right now might not reflect the exact thing that you see later. Anyways, I'll see you guys on the next one. Feel free to check out the rest of my socials. Good night, good afternoon, goodbye, wherever you are. Thanks for watching.